Oh hey, welcome back and Happy New Year. I hope 2025 is filled with offset guitars and great tone for you. Have you ever wondered what the practical differences are between the original all-steel design of the Tuffset Bridge and the new version that comes with optional brass saddles? Or maybe you're just wondering about the differences in general between using brass saddles and steel saddles on a guitar bridge. Well, today we're going to have a quick look over the practical differences between using steel and brass saddles on an offset guitar bridge and whether it will have any impact on your guitar's tone as well. If you love offset bridges or the guitars they come on, please like this video and let me know in the comments what your favourite offset guitar is and which offset bridge you're currently using. I'm currently on a mission to review every single offset bridge and to create the first online video database reviewing and comparing every single offset guitar bridge in detail. I'm about halfway through this process now, and once I've reviewed all 17 offset guitar bridges, I'm then going to start doing various shootout videos taking 2 offset bridges and facing them off back to back. And I'm also then going to do different roundup videos as well, so best offset bridge by style, best offset bridge by price point, and things like that. So there is plenty more coming, so please subscribe to stick around if you're interested in offset guitar hardware. When considering the differences between steel and brass, there are 3 main factors of significance to us as offset guitar players: hardness, grippiness, and tone. Now, with some bridge designs, the relative hardness of the 2 bridge saddle materials would be really significant. And that's because a harder material would be harder wearing and less prone to developing dents, divots, string wear, or burrs. However, because the Tuffset is a rocking bridge, this means that the saddle actually grips the string node, and it's the same piece of the string that is in contact with the saddle at all times. In other words, no matter how hard or violently you use the vibrato, the string isn't rubbing back and forth in the groove of the saddle to wear it down, but the string is actually causing the whole bridge to move backwards and forwards, so there is no string wear on a rocking bridge in the saddle. So what this means is that if you have a non-rocking bridge, you will want to take note of the relative hardness of the saddle material, because that string is constantly going to be soaring in that groove effectively, and it has the potential to really wear that groove down, and that may cause you issues in terms of tuning stability and performance. However, that isn't really a consideration on this bridge because there is no soaring effect of the string, because the string pulls the bridge backwards and forwards. However, for your reference, brass is slightly softer than steel, and if you do have an uncoated brass saddle on a non-rocking bridge, there is quite a decent possibility, especially on these higher strings, that with vibrato use, those strings will start to dig into the saddles and to create burrs and dents and string wear. But not on this one. Now, because a rocking bridge saddle is designed to grip the string so that the string pulls the whole bridge backwards and forwards, the relative grippiness or friction coefficient of the saddle material is something that's really important to consider here. Effectively, how well the saddle grips onto the string will affect how efficiently or effectively the rocking design will work. Now, while brass and stainless steel have similar friction coefficients, brass is a little bit more grippy than stainless steel and may give it a slight advantage in this context. Now, while brass is technically a little bit grippier, both materials are excellent here, and especially given that the slots on these bridge saddles are machined with a 60-degree angle like vintage Jaguar and Jazzmaster saddles, rather than the modern 90 degrees used on most modern bridges and Mustang bridges. This means that the Tuffset Bridge feels super solid, grips the string really effectively, and just feels really nice in the hand. Now, regarding potential tonal differences, I'm expecting to like the steel saddle version slightly more. And that's because I'm expecting the steel saddles to be brighter and punchier and have slightly more scooped mids as well. Whereas I'm expecting the brass saddles to sound warmer, more mid-present, with a looser low end and sweeter highs. To test the real world differences between the steel saddles and the brass saddles, I've prepared 6 back-to-back playing clips. Each playing clip is about 60 seconds long and it cuts back and forth between the two bridges multiple times. I find this style of rapid-fire, repetitive comparison to give you the clearest idea of the tonal differences between the two bridge materials. And each clip exhibits a different playing style or uses a different tone. To begin with, we have 2 clips played completely clean with an AC30 style amp. I then turn on a Color Sound Power Boost pedal and play 2 more clips. And lastly, to finish things off, I play 2 more clips using a JCM 800 style amp. I expect that as we add gain and compression throughout this comparison, the differences between the two bridges will become more and more apparent, because we're going to be amplifying those subtle nuances between the bridges more and more as we add more volume, or as we multiply the signal and as we compress that signal as well. If you want to have the best chance of hearing these differences, I would highly recommend using some nice monitors or a good quality pair of headphones. Wow, okay, so those differences were actually pretty different than what I was expecting to hear. Let's analyse what the differences were. The first thing I noticed straight away was a difference in the mid-range character. Steel had a more honky mid-range character, whereas the brass saddles seemed to impart a tonal character that was more focused on the upper mids and had more of a sizzly upper mid-present sound. To simplify this, or put this in different words, I would say the steel saddles kind of sounded like they had more of a tube screamer mid-range sound, whereas the brass saddles were more akin to a clon style mid-range, if that makes any sense. The second difference I noticed pretty immediately was a difference in the high end. The steel saddles gave the guitar more presence in the higher frequencies, whereas the brass saddles, as I expected, had a rounder, sweeter top end. Most of the time, this meant that the brass saddle equipped bridge sounded less harsh. However, the prominent sizzly upper mid character of the brass saddles did give the guitar a harsh sound in some of the clips. I found this difference in the high end also meant that the steel bridge almost always sounded like it had a bit more clarity and definition, whereas I didn't hear quite so much string definition or separation with the brass saddles. If you want to listen out for this, I think it was particularly noticeable using the neck pickup with the strangle switch. The third difference I noticed was with the pick attack. Again, to my ears, the steel saddles had a very immediate pick attack that was very direct. Whereas with the brass saddles, the guitar had a bit of a softer attack. It didn't sound quite so direct, but it did still retain a nice punchy character. The fourth thing I noticed, and this starts to get a bit abstract now and a little bit hard to articulate, but I noticed a difference in the perceived stiffness of the sound. The steel saddles had a more stiff feeling to the sound, whereas the brass saddles sounded more relaxed. The tone I got with the brass saddles felt more malleable under my fingers, and it also, if you listen to the audio, has a bit more of a kind of saturated sound to the tone as well, even though the guitar wasn't any louder. I think this difference in the perceived stiffness of the sound comes down to the mid-range quality of the two bridges. I would imagine that the stiffer feel and honkier mids of the steel saddles will make your guitar poke out a little bit more in a band mix, whereas the brass saddles would help your guitar to sit a little bit further back in the mix. And the last difference I noticed, and this was possibly the most subtle, was to do with the low end. Listening with good quality headphones, overall the steel saddles just seem to have a little bit more fatness, a bit more of a chunky, deep sound overall than the brass saddles. Okay, so as usual, that was lots of theory and lots of talking, and that's all well and good, but which of the two bridges or which of the two materials might be best suited for you? Well, I'll start by saying that I think both bridges are excellent, and I think both bridges could be used for any playing styles. But if you're really stuck or really on the fence, here's my thoughts about both steel and brass. I would say that these steel saddles might suit more heavy playing styles or people who are going to be using a lot of fuzz. This is because the extended high end of the steel saddles and that more honky mid-range will help give your guitar more clarity if you're using a lot of gain or fuzz, and will help keep your guitar more present in a band mix. Or just in general for any playing style, if you already have a darker amp with a bit more of a mid scoop, the slightly more honky mids and the more clarity and presence and definition of the steel saddle bridge might make it the best bridge for you. By contrast, if you normally play more cleaner or gentle styles, then I think brass will probably give you a more pleasing tone. I think if you play anything like Americana, worship guitar, pop, kind of lower gain bluesy stuff, anything like that, then I think that the sweeter, rounder sound of the brass saddles will work really, really well for you. I would say the brass saddles will give you a tone that could be more vaguely described as more vintage sounding than the steel saddles. not because of anything period correct, just the softer attack, the warmer, more rounded high end, and the slightly looser lows just give you a sound overall that's a little bit more vintage than the brighter, punchier, slightly more percussive and grating sound that you can achieve with the steel saddles. Personally, I actually preferred the sound of the brass saddles, despite expecting to prefer the sound of the steel saddles. I plan on using the brass saddles with tons of fuzz and loads of JCM 800 style gain, so please don't take this as thinking that one bridge is only good for one style and one bridge is only good for the other. Those are just some pointers if you really weren't sure which bridge might be best for you. So there you go, that's everything for today's video. I hope that's given you a bit of an insight into the differences between steel and brass saddles and which might better suit you and your playing style and your rig as well. I'm really glad to have been able to test both bridges back to back, and I have to say a massive thanks to Dan at Tuffset for allowing me to have both bridges at once to do this little comparison. I hope it will prove really useful for those of you in the market for a Tuffset bridge but just unsure about which option will suit you best. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about which tone you preferred, as well as one aspect we didn't even get into in this video, which one you think looks better. Cool. Alright, let's leave it there for today. Until next time, take it easy, look after yourselves, and we'll see each other again soon.